in his stainless steel Corniche to downtown St. Louis, where we toured, this is honest to God truth, where we toured 3 square blocks across the street from the St. Louis Convention Center that this brother owned. And so I was talking to some brothers in Atlanta, and I said to them, this is to be the mecca of black business in the South. I said, could you show me one building even owned by a black person in downtown Atlanta, let alone a block? And the answer would be no. In fact, the only hotels that are owned in Atlanta by a black person is owned by Robert. I think you had that conversation with some Atlantans as well. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think Robert is brilliant. He has quietly done God's work. He has a consciousness. He gives back to the community. He loves us. But he understands that a capitalistic society is about equity and ownership. And that's what he and his brother is about. Please welcome to this stage our billionaire. Our billionaire.
Good afternoon. You know, you're not supposed to believe everything you hear. When George gave me a call to indicate that he would be honoring me, and I was considering myself a part of a greater family of business folks inside of my shop, my brother, and the rest of our family and friends, he said, Mike, there'll be one contingency. I said, what's that? He said, you got to show up. I said, well, you know, George, I do understand that. But it's so similar to the dreams we have out here. Now, we all have dreams, don't we? Yes. What's the first thing you have to do when you have a dream? You got to wake up. You got to wake up. Then you need to sit up, and you need to stand up. And as you move in that direction, you know, frequently we're going to have those great family members that's going to say, you know, maybe you shouldn't try going into business for yourself because, you know, Tyrone did it. We know what happened there. The same family members that may come to your house to visit and not leave for a month, the ones that are there trying to advise you not to fulfill your dreams. Well, after you wake up and stand up, sometimes you just need to tell them to shut up and get out of your way. It's a proud day today for me to address briefly you, the stewards of George Fraser and Company, the stewards of his dream, his vision, that we who live in a capitalistic nation need to realize that if we lived in a socialist nation, we'd be called socialists, right? If we lived in a communist nation, we would be called what? Communist. Well, we live in a capitalistic nation, so therefore we are capitalists. Now, you know, when we were coming up and we were wearing our afros and dashikis, capitalism used to be a bad word. All of that represented the slave master imposing emphasis and influence on the slaves, etc., exploitation. Well, then we continued to believe in the concept, but we were backwards in that concept, you see? Well, we have to realize that exploitation does not necessarily mean is not necessarily a bad word. It is what you do in business. You see, there are times when we have to change our mind and our thinking. I'll give you an example. How many of you think outside the box? Raise your hand. All right, for those of you who raise your hand, I'm about to spank you. Why? Because if you lived outside the box, doesn't that presume that you are in a... And you see, the system will put you and block you and hold you back by making you think that you're in some kind of a box that requires you to do only certain things. Lisa told you right now, and Sonia both said, listen, we don't even think there's such a thing as a box. There's only the horizon. And we can pursue and prosecute our opportunities. And did those sisters walk up here with entrepreneurial, capitalistic swag or what? Congratulations, ladies. I ask you a simple question. What would your life be like if you could eliminate the fear of failure? You see, that's two words. Think about it for a moment. Fear and failure. Fear is nothing but a mental construct. It is not of nature. It is not the grass growing. It's not rain falling. When you were born, you were absolutely perfect. Everyone in this room was absolutely perfect. You allowed yourself to move in a direction that took you away from that perfection. Now, I suggest to you that there's no such thing as fear because it is a mental construct. Second word, failure. I say to you, there's no such thing as failure. You might say, well, Michael, what are you talking about? Well, let's think about that for a moment. Every day when you wake up, you give it 86,400 seconds. 31,589 seconds a year. And in every moment, you must live every moment to its fullest extent. Why? Because that's the only thing you have. Now, you're either going to use it or you're going to what? Use it. So let's enjoy the opportunity that if we experience a business or a project or even a relationship where the outcome isn't as we would have liked, is that an experience we will grow from, or do you consider it failure? I suggest to you it's nothing but an experience. I mean, I've had as many businesses not fulfill my objectives as I have succeed. But I still consider it to be an experience, and I gain from that, and you will gain from it. You know, recently, President Barack Obama, the Secretary of Commerce, placed me on the inaugural National Council for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. There's 26 of us. There are about 4 from the White House, and people like Steve Case from AOL sits next to me, the Secretary of Commerce sits next to the other side, and there's presidents of some universities and whatnot. So when you hear the president speak about innovation and entrepreneurship, it's usually coming from our little dialogue group that sort of feeds the White House to help us begin to think about, well, what are those opportunities to create rapid or fast growth businesses so that we can have the types of commerce that we need in America to protect ourselves and our kids ahead of us yet to come. But too often we don't realize that an entrepreneur is nothing more than a person who's involved in innovation. You don't have to invent anything. You have to be innovative. Let me give you an example, or 2, or maybe 3. Let's give the first one. You know, Sonia talked about her innovative way of thinking in the world of the computer industry. Well, let's go back to the beginning. IBM basically invented the computers, but they slept on the concept of a system that would allow ultimately for all of us to have an operating system that would give us laptops. Well, that's where Bill Gates came along. He was innovative. Bill Gates did not invent the computer. You know, sometimes people think that, but he didn't. And then, you know, the engines that required us to search, the Googles, even the AOLs, that was not Bill Gates, that was another team of innovators. And even today, as we hear people talk about Zuckerberg and the social networking, innovation. And each step of the way, they became billionaires, correct? Yes. That's innovation. I mean, Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. That was invented in Europe. But he realized, and he had the vision to recognize that the potential for this thing called the automobile was coming, but we need a rapid manufacturing line in order for us to produce it. That's what he was famous for, being innovative. And Lisa, you were talking about C students. There's a guy by the name of Smith who wrote a business plan and got a C on it. And of all things, it was about cardboard boxes. We all know what a cardboard box is. It's been around a long time. And it was only about transporting a cardboard box from one spot to the next. He graduated from college and decided he was going to pursue his dream and pursue that business plan that he only got a C on, not a C plus, by the way. That company is now called Federal Express. Cardboard boxes moving from point A to point B. Make sense? All right. So as innovators, we have to recognize that being an entrepreneur is one who innovates. And we have to see that vision, and we have to grow, and we have to go for it. In those 86,400 seconds, when you wake up every day, you know, you have to decide that you're going to take on that effort. You know, we have 24 hours in a day. I'm still looking for a 30-hour day. You know, change is all about. We also hear about how bad the economy is. I know it's bad. I mean, I just opened up a hotel this year in Detroit. Why Detroit? Because folks are saying, you need to think twice about that hotel in Detroit. That's number 12. I said, well, let's back up for a moment. Detroit has more African Americans in its city than any other city in the world, except for some cities in Africa. That means that we have commerce and we have opportunity, and we are a large number in the city of Detroit to allow for that business to prosper. So why can't I make a 108-room hotel work? Well, I know I can, because just yesterday I got a call and they said that the hotel is so beautiful and so secure and so lovely on the Detroit beach that sometime in October Barack Obama is going to come there for a $5,000 a head fundraiser. We don't need to run away from our own neighborhoods. You see, the Victor Roberts building that you saw my office was in was on Martin Luther King and King's Highway. My brother and I just introduced the bill to the City Board of Aldermen. I used to be an alderman myself when I finished law school. My friends were moving out. I moved just 2 blocks from the projects where I lived for 10 years. I have 4 kids. All 4 of them have now graduated from law school. And I will tell you, it does not matter, and don't judge me on the hundreds of millions I may have made. You judge me on how I'm raising my babies. When I told my wife of 33 years yesterday, by the way, and because I'm here, I might get spanked when I get home. I said, Jeannie, would you have believed in your wildest dreams that I would be receiving such a prestigious award from George Fraser and such an august body? She looked at me and she said, well, Michael, congratulations, but honestly, you've never been in my wildest dreams. I congratulate you on being one who names our organization here after you. And as you notice, we name all of our companies Roberts this and Roberts that. And I remember one brother came up to me once and said, so what's up with that, man? You naming all this Roberts this and Roberts that. He said, what is that, some kind of an ego problem? I said, not really. But what is yours, some kind of an envy problem? You don't say that to Mr. Rockefeller and Mr. Mellon. You didn't say that to Mr. Bush as you sip on that 40. Black man, you better get out of my face. For 10 years, as I said, I lived 2 blocks from the project, so don't let the light skin fool you. Listen, you saw the story about my mom who told me how she was, when she was a little girl, she couldn't go to that theater. And believe it or not, the hotel next door to it in that block that we owned, my dad worked for 39 years at the post office, and as I said before, we weren't rich, we weren't poor, we just never had any money. And I know a lot of you have never heard of the Roberts brothers, and that's okay. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is rich people scream, but wealthy people whisper. So as I close, I want you to know that, yes, even at that hotel that's next to the theater, and the theater didn't let my mother and her girlfriends in until later, then they sat in the nosebleed section to look down on the stage. Yes, today we now own that stage. And that hotel next door to it, they didn't want black people to even deliver the mail, and today we own that hotel. So as we march through the South in our hotels in Dallas and Houston and Shreveport, Jackson, Mississippi, and Columbia, South Carolina, and Spartanburg, South Carolina, here in Atlanta, in Tampa, and Fort Myers, St. Louis, and now Detroit, it was almost like we just followed the Freedom Trail. Only 4 TV stations in St. Louis, Jackson, and a radio station there as well. Columbia, South Carolina, Evansville, Indiana. Only 7 black-owned TV stations left in the United States, which is pitiful. But we own 4 of those. So I just say to you, it's our right to be proud. We've been hearing the song over and over today as part of his theme song. So I want you to follow with me and repeat after me. Say it loud.
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 Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Michael Roberts, you know him now. Michael Roberts. Well, excuse me.